Hello everyone, today I have a comparison for you between the 2015 Kylo Ren Shuttle on the left and the 2019 Kylo Ren Shuttle on the right. Now I am going to be telling you which is best for playability and which is best for display. Now before we get started, both of these are in a very similar price point, at both being around $130 nowadays in today's currency. However, you can, depending on where you can buy them, you can find them both at relatively the same price point. This one's probably going to be a little bit cheaper, depending on if you want to buy it new through eBay or Mercari or wherever you want to buy it. But you can also find this one at a decent price point, similar to the 130 that you can get this one at. Now, I'm not going to be including minifigures because objectively the 2019 one has much better minifigs. However, the 2015 one also has semi-good minifigures, but it's not comparable, so I'm just going to not disclose that. That's why I'm going to be doing slightly different review / comparison than I normally would do. But if we get into the interior side of this one first, if I can open it, there is basically a slot for a few minifigures. You've got your cockpit slot where you can put like a pilot or a Kylo Ren, and then you can presumably put 2 to 3 more minifigures in the back. However, you can't really put 3 unless you have them sitting down, because then it won't close fully, and then you'll have slight slit open, so you probably don't want to do that. Now, over on this one, however, you don't have the standing slots. You do have some seats. You have a seat right there and a seat right there in the back. And then also an easier to fit in cockpit seat, because this cockpit has these little sticks that you'd use to control it, shoot, and fire. However, those will get in the way when you try to put a minifigure in, so you're going to have to preemptively sit them back. If I can fit him in there, because otherwise the minifigure is going to get stuck on those sticks, and even then it's a little bit difficult to fit in. Whereas if I take First Order Stormtrooper over here, I can much more efficiently put him in there and keep him in there, because I feel like this cockpit works a little bit better and friendlier for at least the cockpit minifig position. Now, if you want to put minifigures in the back, you are going to have to be more careful, because if you push down too hard, it is going to drop, and you are going to have a little bit of hard time keeping it up there. However, if you push down on this, there's at least some kind of a stop from the bottom, which makes it easier to kind of push back in there. However, it is a little bit looser since it doesn't have a full-on clip. So depending on who you are, you might find that system a little bit easier to use, or this system, because this one actually is held up by studs. A few studs there due to this gray plate. You have these 4 studs connect over to the bottom, whereas that one just has the little Technic stop at the end. Now, these also have a specific now you can see that there's no hinge on this part for the 2019 version, because that is where the Technic components are, so that you can fold the wings out. So that is definitely a point towards accuracy, because if you want to display this, you can display it in flight mode, which right now I have the wings folded down just so that it's a little bit easier. But this one, they're kind of stiff. You can't move them at all. There's no Technic, but instead you get a nice extra storage slot, which you can fit 2 minifigures in there, because I have tested that before. And you also have 2 slots for guns, so you can store a little bit of weapons and a little bit of minifigures in there, so you can bring more troopers or whatever you want on your journey, which I think is a big plus for playability, especially since the wings, when they're folded out, much bigger wingspan may be fun at first, but if you have narrow corridors, it might chip, you might damage the wings, things might break. So that's why I think I'm going to give a bonus to playability on this one. However, function and design for this one, so that's basically going to point towards This one being much more displayable, since you can have the flight mode, which looks very nice, and also the folded mode. However, this one doesn't have that extra function, but however, it does have the extra interior slot, which is going to be very nice for playability. Now, if we move over to the back of the ship, you can see these red thrusters. You've got a little bit of detailing over on the back. However, on this one, if I go turn around, you've got this orange, which looks very nice with the rest of it, with the rest of the ship. However, you do get a small crate, so you do have at least some storage. It might be a little bit tricky to get there, but it's there. And you also have another way to extend the wings if you don't want to pick it up. So you can do it like manually or just through the process of moving it, which happens. You might have to hold it if you don't want them flying out through play, which it's kind of, if you want to land it, I guess you would need to do that. Whereas with this one, you don't have to do that. However, if you want to use this in proper flight mode, you do have to fold out these panels. So both things. And since there's less Technic, I do find these engines do fall out. I just had it fall out right there. So there is a little bit of a weaker connection. So if you're holding it from the back, there is going to be a little bit of trouble. Now, both of these are quite heavy models, so you definitely aren't going to have a small child playing with them. You're going to have someone a little bit older probably holding these. And so probably you're going to want to give them this one because it's just ultimately a better design and model. However, if you do feel that the older one is of better use, for instance, with all of its neat features that I've covered so far, you can give them that. Now, if we go over into the more, now if I go back down again, you can see that here on the bottom, there's not too much, but on this one, you have the stud shooters there, which if you accidentally push on these during transit, that might be a little bit of a problem because they're going to fire off and they're just going to go absolutely everywhere and you might have a problem. Now, on this model, however, you can have them on the wings, so it's a little bit so it's a little bit more difficult to activate them necessarily because you have to put your finger or something over on these spots just to fire them out. But you won't be accidentally firing them, which I think is much better because if you're going to be playing with this, you're not going to be accidentally shooting off projectiles that you don't need to while you're flying. But then when you need to, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to activate, but I think that's a good trade-off if you're not just going to be losing them while flying. So I think that's another bonus for playability on this guy, and so far he's in the lead with this one in second place. However, they are currently almost tied in the design and functionality because I haven't gotten over the color and accuracy yet, but we'll get to that. So now there's also another thing, which I think, yes, because it has these landing gears, it is slightly taller, so it's going to slightly edge out. If you can see, it's slightly taller. So if you want something that's going to be taller, this is going to be the model for you because it's just going to reach out much higher and it's probably going to be a more in the air. I don't know how to put it. It's going to be much more grand, even slightly. And if you have it on a stand, you can even have those bottom plates open out, and then you're going to really have a menacing. So if I can get that. Okay, 1 second. Okay, well, it's going to be a little bit difficult to show that off properly. But yeah, no, that's just menacing wing right there. It's not going to fold out, but, it's going to look really menacing like that. Especially if you have a custom-built stand for it, it's going to look big, it's going to look menacing, and you're going to have a nice big gray piece of destruction on your shelf, your wall, however you want to display it. Now, the downside of having those two panels is that you're going to have to constantly put them in, put them out if you want to play. So that's kind of a downside to playability on this guy, because that might get annoying. If you're going to be playing with this semi-regularly, you're going to have problems where you're just going to get tired of folding those wings in and out. But still, I think both of these models are great, And there is also a slight difference in cannons. As you can see, these cannons are slightly larger, so if you like big cannons, this is probably the set for you. But you shouldn't just judge it on cannons, because that's probably a bad idea. Now I've folded out the wings on this guy over here, and you can see that this clearly looks much better. Now, you can say for yourself, because I have both of them, I'm going to turn this one so you can get a side profile as well. You can clearly see both very big and menacing ships. Now, you got a little bit more detail over here on the bottom for this one rather than this one, because this one's basically clean black throughout, which I find is really nice looking. And also, they basically look the same on the bottom, because you have both of them basically reaching there. You have I would say you have easier time landing this one than you do that one, even though they might both take you a little bit of time, because you have the wings that you need to look out for and land properly on this model, and then you've got the flipping of the switches or wing panels for that one. Now, I would objectively say that this cockpit looks a little bit cleaner, because you can see that there's a little bit of a gap over here, which isn't really present over on this one. So you can decide for you if that's a deal breaker, that there's just slightly more gaps. And on this model, you have a different problem where the color slightly exceeds over, so it's not clean black on the front. Now, both of them also have a slight issue where these panels tend to move slightly. I think it's a larger problem over on the 2019 model, so that might be something that might annoy you during play, so that's why this one is probably going to get the bonus. But if you have a feeling that it'll move on you on your own, it's not going to do that too much. It's if you're going to be moving from flight modes too often, so moving from that to in, to back, and in, it might loosen a bit, fall down on you. But that's not too big of a problem if you're keeping it stationary, either in flight mode, which makes it like really stand out, because if you compare it to my shelves, it's basically moving up into the like really big. So it's going to be a menace in your room, to say the least, which I think is why final rating, I'm probably going to say this is going to be your choice for display, and this is going to be your choice for playability. Now, if you think that's a little bit wrong, and you think that this one might be better for play and this one might be better for display, well, that's your opinion. You're entitled to it. That's fine. Now, this one also works great for play, and this one also works great for display. I'm not saying that you have to pick and choose which one you want for play and display. Like, I'm keeping them on display over up here on the shelf for the time being, because I don't have respectable spots. But as you can see, this looks a lot more menacing than this. However, I do have them both like straight up, because they're both like kind of landed, and I think that looks good. So if you have both of them, you know, displaying them next to each other is not that bad of an idea, because they look really great next to each other. But if you're single-handedly going to pick out one or the other, I would probably recommend this one more than this one. Now, don't get me wrong, I think both of these are great sets, but my personal preference is going with this one over this one. But, you know, I might be wrong sometimes, and you might say, well, this one has this, this, and this, which is much better than this one. And that's perfectly fine, I understand. I'm not the best when it comes to every Lego set, and my opinion is not necessarily correct. It's probably not. But that's for you to decide. So that's going to do it for today's comparison. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. But that is all. So see you next time. Bye.